I'm Al Lind. I'm the president of the American Custom Gunmakers Guild. Today is January 25th, 2009. We're at the Silver Legacy Hotel in Reno, the American Custom Gunmakers 25th anniversary show. We are presenting today the 24th Guild rifle that was put together by the American Custom Gunmakers and Firearms Engravers Guild of America. The rifle is an 1885 Winchester low wall that's been modified considerably. All the internal parts have been redone, but I'll let the metalsmith Roger Farrell talk about that. I did the stock work on this gun. It was designed to be more or less a copy of the special sporting rifle that Winchester produced. We made some modifications with it. The cheek piece is a little bit different. But other than that, it's pretty much along the same lines as the American or the special sporting rifle. The piece of wood that we used on this is a piece of American black walnut. The inserts that we used on this are Damascus steel that were forged by Hank Nickmeyer, and the theme of the gun is a special Hornet, because the caliber is a .22 Hornet. And so when Mr. Nickmeyer made these inserts, you'll note that they're little tiny Hornets in the Damascus steel. Originally on the special sporting rifles, they used ebony in these inserts, both front and rear, and we use these Damascus steel. Mr. Nickmeyer also made a knife, the butt of which is a piece of scrap that came off this stock. The blade has these little hornets with antennae, legs. It's really a pretty incredible little knife. The rifle itself is designed to have a little bit of cast off, because when it's mounted, it goes on the arm rather than on the shoulder. So it has a little bit of cast off on it. As I say, it's a .22 Hornet. It's excellent for plinking, varmint hunting. Notice that this rifle is a fairly long rifle, and the case is pretty short. This is one of the very few takedown low walls that were made. In this particular rifle, you take the scope off. It slides off the mounts just by turning a couple of screws. Then the barrel is set on a half thread, so you pull this little button right here forward, twist the barrel 90 degrees, and it slides apart. And then the pieces fit into this case here. The rifle was originally designed for use with open sights. So in stocking this particular rifle has no open sights. It's designed to be used strictly with a scope. So we had to make the comb higher than it would have been on the original rifle. To do this, we had to bend both of the tangs on the rifle up. and then Roger had to realign the screws so that they would line up and I could get them through and lock them in. One thing that is different about this gun, because it's a modern gun built in a more or less antique style, we had to have a cheek piece, and I designed the cheek piece to have a little recurve on it, which is a more modern touch, but with this slight curve down in the front, which is something that the original sporting rifle did. The checkering pattern also, rather than being a straight point pattern, I wanted to flow along with the lines of the entire stock, where you've got curves back in here, you have curves up in the forearm up here, so the borders of the checkering are somewhat curved. You can see right in here, these lines at the top and bottom, and the lines back in here curve a little bit. The ribbons that run through the front have a little bit of a curve to them. Now we'd like to get one of the other makers, Roger Farrell, who did the metal work on this, is coming up, so I'll pass it over to him.
Hi, I'm Roger Farrell. I'm the metalsmith of this project. I'd like to start by giving you a little idea about the concept that went into to the rifle itself. The idea was, since this is the American Custom Gunmakers Guild, was to build a truly American rifle, and there's nothing more that typifies that than an older Winchester rifle. We also wanted to use a cartridge that would be fun to shoot, not only for small game, but also that a young person or a woman could shoot, and it would also be just a fun plinking round. So we chose an American cartridge, which is the 22 Hornet. My portion of the project was to do the metal work. We started with a Winchester takedown action that was originally in 25 rimfire. So the first job was to convert it to center fire, bush the breech block. I also annealed the entire action so that I could polish and shape the outside of it. After the action was rebuilt, it was barreled with a Douglas 14-inch twist barrel and machined to a half-round, half-octagon barrel. That was in keeping with the overall concept and theme that the rifle would look like a traditional Winchester special single shot, but just a rifle that's made to a higher degree of fit and finish. Let's see. I also did the metal finishing. So after the rifle was barreled, the action itself was hand filed and polished, make sure all the edges were nice and sharp and clean. The tangs were bent. What small parts were worn were all remade from new parts. The rifle then went to Al Lind, who put a stock on it, then to Jerome Glim, who engraved it. Then it came back to me. And I had the unenviable task of taking Jerome's nice pristine engraving and heating it up to about 1350 degrees and then throwing it into a tank of cold water. The colors came out well, but we decided to remove the colors from the action and gray it so that the colors would not hide Jerome's good engraving. But the colors were selectively removed in other areas that weren't engraved. For example, on the trigger guard, not the trigger guard, but the finger lever and the lower tang, the portions that Jerome did not engrave were left colored. And on the butt, you can see it here, Jerome did an excellent job of engraving the Guild logo in the center of the butt. The remainder of the butt was left colored, but then the colors were selectively removed to highlight the Guild logo. And the final little bit of metal finishing was to rust blue the barrel niter blew the scope, niter blew the screws. The scope is a Nerdle 1¼ inch varmint scope. It's an 8-power scope. The scope was sent to Parsons Optical, completely disassembled and reconditioned on the inside. Parsons then sent me the scope tube, and I polished and slow rust blued the scope tube, and also etched, if you can catch it here, the Guild logo on the, there you go, the Guild logo on the objective bell of the scope. So after the scope was blued, it was then returned to Parsons Optical, who returned it. I guess the last thing I'll tell you is that the rifle shoots well with a case full of Hodgdon Lil gun and Hornady 40 grain VMAX bullets. The velocity is over 3,000 feet per second, and the groups were quite good.
My name is Jerome Glim. I'm from Conrad, Montana, and I did the engraving on the number 24 Guild rifle. This was a collaboration that was started mainly by Roger Farrell. He got me to agree to do the engraving, which I was happy to do. And we decided that we wanted to do an engraving on it that was typical of the period of engraving that was done when the rifle was built. The style of scroll that I decided on, I kind of copied from one that Rudolph Kornbrath had done on a Winchester high wall and modified it to fit on this low wall. I will pick up the rifle and we can take a look at some of the engraving. The sides of the receiver are fully covered with a Germanic style of engraving. Also covers the top of the receiver and the tang, the sides of the lever, and the bottom of the lever. I also put some gold inlay on the barrel on putting the ACGG number 24 on one side and gold inlaying the 22 Hornet on the other side. One part that I also did was on the butt plate. I put the ACGG emblem in the middle of the butt plate, which was very difficult to do when you're working in a concave area like that. You have to start cutting from one direction and then turn around and start cutting from the other direction, and hopefully the lines will meet where you want them to meet. That about covers the extent of what I can talk about on the engraving on this. I sincerely hope whoever wins this rifle will appreciate it. There was a lot of time put into this rifle by all three craftsmen, and we sincerely hope that it raises a lot of money for the Guild. The case for this project was made by Marvin Huey, who has made one, I think, for every Guild rifle that has been made. It's an oak and leather covered case, very nicely appointed. The knife that is included in the case was made by Hank Neckermeyer, and the blade is made of Damascus steel, which has hornet designs in the Damascus. The Damascus steel was also used on the forehand tip and the pistol grip on the buttstock of the rifle.
This project has been a lot of fun to work on. We've really enjoyed it, and I couldn't work with two other better craftsmen than I've got right next to me. Some lucky guy or gal is going to win this fabulous gun for 20 bucks.